Converse have been one of the world's most popular shoes for decades. Kids, adults, old people, they're for everyone. If you go walk around any town or city right now, the odds of you spotting somebody wearing a pair of Converse is very likely. I've even owned a couple pairs throughout my life, and so did my parents. And one of the reasons that they've lasted so long, especially against competitors like Vans, is because of that timeless design, versatility, affordability, and their comfortable fit. It's just a classic sneaker that goes with all kinds of styles and can be worn to a wide range of occasions. Many people would consider Converse a staple of their wardrobe due to that reason alone. They've also developed a cultural significance over the years, as these shoes have inspired various subcultures relating to music, art, sports, and media. Converse have been worn in a ton of hit movies and TV shows like Stranger Things, The Breakfast Club, Harry Potter, Rocky, and the list just keeps going on and on. All of which just helped boost the popularity of the shoe and cemented these iconic sneakers as more than just a pair of shoes. But what if I told you that legally, Converse aren't actually shoes? Before we get into why these shoes aren't really shoes, we need to understand a little bit more about the company's backstory and how they got there. Converse were invented by a 47-year-old man named Marquis Mills Converse, who at the time was a manager of a footwear manufacturing firm. He opened the Converse Rubber Shoe Company in February of 1908 in Malden, Massachusetts, focusing on rubber-soled footwear for winter, galoshes, tennis shoes, and surprisingly some non-footwear items like automobile tires. But it wasn't until the summer of 1916 when business really started to pick up. This is when Converse introduced a basketball line, and by 1917 the first Converse All-Star basketball shoe was introduced and quickly gained popularity. Shortly after, in 1922, pro basketball player Charles "Chuck" Taylor came to Converse complaining of his sore feet, so Converse decided to give him a job as a salesman and an ambassador. And he actually did such a good job promoting the shoes around the US that in 1932 his signature was added to the All-Star, which led to sales for the All-Star starting out hot, but unfortunately the world was changing fast and the company fell into bankruptcy. And because of this, by 1939, Converse was sold to the Stone family just so they could keep operating. Shortly after being sold was when the US entered World War II, and Converse, like many other companies, shifted production, focusing on products to sell to the military. They were still manufacturing rubberized footwear, but they added outerwear and protective suits to their production line. They continued on this operation until after the war's end, and then they pivoted back to focusing production again on only athletic footwear. In the 1950s and 1960s, Converse wanted to improve their post-war reputation, so they started promoting an American image when its Converse basketball yearbooks celebrated the Converse role in the lives of both high school and college athletes. And shortly after this, they came out with the low-cut version of the popular All-Stars, and by 1966, the shoe was available in any school colors. Unfortunately, once again, the hype didn't last as long as they hoped, as Converse lost its athletic shoe monopoly from the 1970s onward to competitors like Puma, Adidas, and Nike, which all massively grew in popularity during the time. Reebok also eventually introduced new design technology to the sports market, resulting in the Converse no longer being affiliated as the official shoe of the NBA. Their canvas rubber sole did regain some popularity in the 1980s as a casual footwear, but it was becoming evident that the company was too dependent on the All-Star basketball brand, and they were quickly once again losing momentum. January of 2001 was when reality really set in. They were officially filing for their second bankruptcy, and it was looking like the end of these sneakers for good. But a few months later in April, footwear acquisition led by Marsden Kaysen and Bill Simon purchased the brand from bankruptcy and added a bunch of elite industry partners to turn the whole operation around. And they must have done a pretty decent job because they caught the attention of Nike, and 2 years later Nike paid $309 million to acquire Converse. Now, Nike still owns the brand to this day, but when they bought Converse back in 2003, they had to make some major cutbacks to get the brand back to where it once was. This is when they discovered a loophole that would potentially save them billions when it comes to manufacturing Converse shoes, but they had to make some modifications to the shoe itself, which is why Converse are legally considered slippers. The reason all comes down to taxes, but in 2003 when they linked up with Nike, Converse began adding felt to the soles of their shoes and classifying them as slippers for import tax purposes. Basically, back in the day, tariffs were placed on imported shoes with leather and plastics, but sneakers that were made with fabric uppers were classified differently. Converse figured out that by covering at least 50% of the sole with fabric, they could legally import their footwear at a reduced cost. They argued that their canvas sneakers didn't fall in the same category as real shoes, and they played the tax game to save some money, and it ended up working. While footwear classified as slippers has an import or duty rate between 7.5 and 12%, footwear classified as having rubber or plastic outer soles have rates of 37.5% or higher. So while we might think of Converse as shoes, and they definitely look and feel like shoes, legally on paper, they're technically considered slippers or footwear made of textile materials. Alright, let's break it down a bit further. For the sake of making it easier on myself, since I'm not a mathematician, we'll just say the classification of slippers began on January 1st of 2004. Jeff Cottrell, who was the general manager and VP of Converse in 2015, said that 270,000 pairs are sold per day, equating to roughly 100 million pairs per year. And I'm sure that number has fluctuated before and after 2015 based on spikes or declines in popularity, but we're going to use that 100 million pairs sold per year as a baseline. A low-top pair of Converse is estimated to be about $8 to produce, so it's safe to assume a high-top pair would be anywhere from $10 to $12. Again, just to make it easier on myself and you guys watching, we'll just average that out to $10. The import tax classified on shoes, not slippers, would mean that they would be paying roughly $3.75 extra per pair. With our baseline of 100 million pairs being sold per year, that would come out to $375 million just in import tax. This is where it gets interesting. Since legally on paper we know Converse are considered slippers, they're actually paying more like $1.25 extra per pair, cutting down the import tax by more than 50%. This would mean for 100 million pairs being sold each year, they would pay $125 million, saving $250 million per year. A very smart move when it comes to cutting costs, and since 2004 to now, that would mean they've saved over $5.2 billion just in taxes. So why doesn't every shoe manufacturer and brand do this then? While it is technically still possible for shoe companies to use this slipper strategy known as tariff engineering, it's become much more strict and customs authorities are more vigilant about practices like this. While Converse are still able to take advantage of this, the specific guidelines for footwear classifications have changed, and any attempts to reclassify products must adhere to these regulations. And misclassification laws have also evolved and can lead to harsher penalties, fines, and seizure of the goods. Tariff engineering is legally permissible and still doable by all means, but the requirements for ensuring compliance with these newer regulations is an extremely delicate process, and any mistakes can have major consequences. Nike and Converse might have been able to figure it out back in the early 2000s, and I honestly wouldn't be surprised if in this decade other companies attempted this practice, but I would be surprised if they were able to do it successfully. Thank you a ton to all the new viewers and those taking the time to watch this video. A lot of time is spent researching, writing, and editing these videos. If it made you say, well, that's something, then we achieved our goal here today. Please consider supporting the channel. The best way to do that is by liking and subscribing. I'm working on improving with each video, so I really do appreciate that you took the time to watch this. As always, stay safe and stay curious, everyone.